You know, I never imagined this day would actually come. All my life, I raised him with my own hands. I stayed up countless nights when he was sick, wiping his forehead, singing lullabies even when I was exhausted. I worked long hours, skipped meals, and saved every penny so he could have what he needed: a proper room, good food, clothes, everything he ever wanted. I gave him my love, my time, my strength, and I thought that would be enough. But one evening, everything changed. I was sitting at the dinner table, trying to make small talk, when he looked at me with those eyes, cold, sharp, unrecognizable. He said words I will never forget. "Mom, I can't have you living here anymore. You're just an extra mouth in this house." For a moment, I felt like the ground beneath me had vanished. My own son, the boy I had raised, the one I had held through scraped knees and heartbreaks, had thrown me out like I was nothing. I couldn't speak, I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. The weight of rejection pressed down on me, and yet, amid the heartbreak, a spark ignited inside me. A spark I didn't know I had. After that night, when my son looked at me as if I was nothing, I felt my world crumble. I wandered the streets in shock, carrying a small bag with my few belongings, trying to process what had just happened. I had spent decades pouring my love, time, and energy into him, and suddenly, it felt like it had all been for nothing. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every penny saved, and he dismissed it like it meant nothing. I felt invisible, discarded, and broken in a way I didn't think a mother could ever feel. The first few days were the hardest. I stayed with friends here and there, but I hated imposing. Sleeping on a couch, on a floor, even on a park bench felt alien. I missed the warmth of a home, the comfort of belonging, the security of family. I would watch families laugh together through their windows as I passed by, holding back tears, my chest heavy with loneliness. Sometimes, I would sit in my car, parked on a quiet street, clutching my bag, my mind spinning with memories of my son as a little boy, the way he used to run into my arms when he was scared, the way he would call me at 3 a.m. if he had a bad dream. And now, those memories felt like cruel reminders of what I had lost, or what I thought I had lost. I called him, of course. I tried to reason, to plead, to remind him of everything we had shared, but my calls went unanswered. Texts were ignored. I felt rejected not just physically, but emotionally. How could the person I loved the most in the world treat me like I was a burden? I started questioning myself, wondering if maybe he was right. Had I truly been too much? Had I taken more than I gave? The thought crushed me, and yet it sparked something deeper inside me, a fire that refused to die. One evening, after wandering aimlessly through the streets, I sat on a small park bench, exhausted, hungry, and shivering. I looked up at the bright city lights reflecting on the dark sky and thought, is this really how my life will end? Discarded? Forgotten? Alone? My heart ached, but amid the pain, clarity began to emerge. I realized that my worth could never be measured by anyone else, not my son, not anyone. I had spent my entire life giving, supporting, loving without expecting anything in return. That had been my strength, and it always would be. And then it hit me. I had a choice. I could continue to cry and feel sorry for myself, or I could reclaim my life, my dignity, and my worth. I didn't want revenge in the cruel sense, but I wanted to show him, and more importantly, show myself, that I had value. That I was not powerless. That a woman who had given so much could also rise from heartbreak stronger than ever. I remembered my savings, a small account I had tucked away for emergencies, the one he never knew existed. Slowly, deliberately, I started researching. I spoke to a real estate agent, timidly at first, afraid they would dismiss me as an old woman with no power. But I found someone who listened, who treated me seriously, and I began to plan. I spent days walking past the neighborhood, watching the houses, noting which ones were empty or for sale. I thought about the house I had shared with my son, the very place where I had cooked, cleaned, comforted, and loved him, and the thought of it being mine again filled me with a strange mixture of sorrow and determination. I began imagining what it would feel like to stand tall again, to reclaim something that had been taken from me, not out of spite, but out of the recognition that my life and my dignity mattered. During those weeks, I also had moments of deep reflection. I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. Was I letting my anger control me? Was I becoming the type of person I never wanted to be, the one who used wealth to punish? But each time doubt crept in, I reminded myself, this is not punishment. This is affirmation. This is me rising, quietly, without cruelty, without shame. I also began connecting with other women in similar situations. I shared my story with neighbors, friends, even strangers, and I found strength in their experiences. Many had faced rejection, disrespect, or abandonment, and yet they had found ways to rebuild their lives. Their courage inspired me. I realized I was not alone, and my pain, though intense, could be transformed into something powerful. The turning point came one evening when I decided I was ready. I had saved enough to put a down payment on a property. Not just any property, but a house near my son's street, close enough that he would see, but far enough to keep my peace. I remember feeling my heart pound as I signed the paperwork, holding the pen with trembling hands. The weight of what I had just done was enormous, but so was the satisfaction. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was reclaiming my life, proving my worth, and showing the world, and myself, that no one has the right to dismiss me. After buying the house, I poured myself into renovating it. Every nail, every brushstroke, every repair was done with care and intention. I turned it into a welcoming home for tenants, advertising it, screening applicants, and soon, rent started coming in regularly. Each payment reminded me of my strength. Each visit to the property reminded me that I could rise, rebuild, and create stability, even when I was at my lowest. Even as the tension mounted, as I wrestled with a mix of hurt, hope, fear, and determination, I felt a quiet joy growing inside me. I wasn't powerless. I wasn't discarded. I had survived, adapted, and begun to thrive. And slowly, I felt the anticipation of the day my son would see what I had done. Not with malice, but with quiet, undeniable proof of my resilience. The decision to take control of my life didn't come instantly. It crept up quietly, almost imperceptibly, until one day, I realized I could no longer remain passive. I had wandered for days, feeling the sting of rejection, loneliness pressing against me like a storm I couldn't escape. But I had also discovered something I hadn't realized before, the power within me to rise, to act, to reclaim what had been dismissed. I began by examining my resources. Over the years, I had quietly saved a small nest egg, money I had tucked away for emergencies, careful not to tell anyone, not even my son. Every penny had been earned through long hours, hard work, and sacrifices, but now, it felt like a secret weapon. For the first time, I felt hope. I wasn't entirely powerless. I could do something that would restore my dignity and perhaps teach a subtle lesson in respect. I called a real estate agent I barely knew. I was nervous at first. I expected polite dismissal, the kind that says, "You're too old, too small, too insignificant." But instead, I found someone willing to listen, someone who treated me as capable and serious. That small act, being acknowledged as someone who could make a real, financial move, lit a fire inside me. It was the first time in days that I felt a surge of control over my own life. I began scouting neighborhoods quietly. I walked past the streets where my son lived, noting which properties were for sale, which ones seemed abandoned, which ones had the potential to become a source of stability. And then it hit me. The house I had shared with my son, the very one where I had cooked, cleaned, nurtured, and loved for years, could be mine again. My heart raced at the thought. It wasn't about revenge, not in the cruel sense. It was about reclaiming my place in life, reminding myself that I mattered and proving to him and myself that I was not someone to be discarded. Every day that passed brought a mixture of fear and anticipation. I questioned myself constantly. Was I being petty? Was I letting anger guide my choices? Each doubt was met with a quieter, stronger voice inside me. This is about dignity, not vengeance. This is about reclaiming your life, your worth, and your future. That voice strengthened me, and I slowly allowed it to guide my actions. When the time came to make the move, I remember the night before vividly. I could hardly sleep. My mind raced with 100 scenarios. What if it didn't work? What if he found out and reacted badly? What if I was overstepping some invisible line? And yet, beneath the nerves, there was a thrill, a sense that I was finally stepping into a chapter of life where I was in control. I realized that for the first time in years, I was acting entirely for myself. No one's opinion could dictate my next steps. No one's dismissal could stop me. I signed the paperwork carefully, trembling as I held the pen. The house was mine. I had reclaimed a piece of the world that had once felt lost to me. That evening, I sat in the quiet of my new property, imagining the tenants who would live there, imagining the life that would grow around these walls. Each corner, each room, was a testament to my effort, my strength, and my refusal to be ignored. The transformation was not instantaneous, but it was profound. Renovating the property became my therapy. I painted the walls, repaired the leaks, polished the floors. Each action was a statement, a reminder that I was capable of creating beauty and stability even from pain. I advertised the house, screened tenants meticulously, and soon, rent began flowing in. Every payment that arrived in my account felt like a quiet victory, a tangible proof that I was no longer a burden, that I could create my own security, and that my life had not ended on that curb outside my son's house. I also began noticing small changes in myself. The fear that had haunted me after being thrown out was gradually replaced with confidence. I walked taller, smiled more genuinely, and felt the strength that comes from taking decisive action. I was no longer defined by someone else's rejection. Instead, I defined myself through my choices, my efforts, and the life I was rebuilding brick by brick. The anticipation of my son discovering my actions added a complex layer to my emotions. I didn't want to gloat, nor did I act out of spite. But a part of me longed for him to see, to finally understand that the woman he had called a burden was not only surviving but thriving. And as the days turned into weeks, I found that my focus shifted from him entirely. I was no longer obsessed with the hurt he caused me. I was immersed in the work of rebuilding, in the quiet satisfaction of creating something valuable with my own hands, in the profound realization that my life could be both independent and meaningful. I also began noticing small changes in myself. The fear that had haunted me after being thrown out was gradually replaced with confidence. I walked taller, smiled more genuinely, and felt the strength that comes from taking decisive action. I was no longer defined by someone else's rejection. Instead, I defined myself through my choices, my efforts, and the life I was rebuilding brick by brick. The anticipation of my son discovering my actions added a complex layer to my emotions. I didn't want to gloat, nor did I act out of spite. But a part of me longed for him to see, to finally understand that the woman he had called a burden was not only surviving but thriving. And as the days turned into weeks, I found that my focus shifted from him entirely. I was no longer obsessed with the hurt he caused me. I was immersed in the work of rebuilding, in the quiet satisfaction of creating something valuable with my own hands, in the profound realization that my life could be both independent and meaningful. The day finally arrived when I sensed my son had noticed what I had done. I was tending to the small repairs in the house, fixing a leaky faucet, painting a corner of the wall, when one of my tenants waved at him as he walked down the street. Are you living next door? Your mom owns this house, by the way, they said casually. I watched from the window, my heart pounding in my chest, as his steps froze. I could see it, that flicker of disbelief, of confusion, and maybe even a hint of guilt, flash across his face. I didn't move, didn't speak, just let the moment linger. And in that pause, I realized something powerful. This wasn't about revenge. This was about recognition. The recognition of a life, a woman, a mother, who refused to be invisible. He turned slowly, almost as if afraid to look at me, and our eyes met. I could see the storm of emotions behind his gaze: shame, surprise, a dawning respect, and a painful realization that he had been wrong. For the first time, I didn't see my child. I saw a man confronted by the consequences of his own actions, and I didn't need to say a word. The story of our lives, the sacrifices I had made, and the dignity I had reclaimed, it was written across my calm, determined face. Later that day, He approached my door. I was preparing dinner, hands deep in flour for a simple loaf of bread, when I heard a hesitant knock. My heart skipped a beat. He shuffled in, avoiding my gaze, trying to find the words. And as he spoke, I listened without interruption. He apologized, awkwardly, haltingly, stumbling over words he clearly didn't know how to use.
Mom,
I didn't realize. I was wrong. I'm so sorry, his voice cracked, and I felt a mixture of sadness and something else, a bittersweet pride. I didn't respond immediately. I let him speak, let him stumble and fumble, because in that moment, it was his lesson, his realization, not mine. I saw the man I had raised, flawed, human, but capable of understanding, and I felt a strange sense of peace. My anger, which had simmered for weeks, had softened into calm clarity. I had not acted out of malice. I had acted out of self-respect. I had proven, quietly but undeniably, that my life, my worth, and my dignity mattered. As he continued to speak, I reflected on our journey. I remembered the little boy who used to cling to my hands, who had trusted me with every fear and every dream. I remembered the teenager who had laughed, fought, and loved so intensely. And now, I saw the man he was becoming, a man who had to learn, sometimes painfully, about respect, gratitude, and humility. I felt a surge of compassion for him, even amidst my own pain. I took a deep breath and finally spoke. Not to scold, not to gloat, but to affirm. I raised you with love, sacrifice, and patience, I said softly, my voice steady. I never asked for anything in return except respect. I hoped you'd see that, and maybe someday you would. I paused, letting the words sink in. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to show you that love and strength can exist together, and that being discarded doesn't mean being worthless. He looked at me, his eyes wide, glistening with unshed tears. There was a moment of silence, a quiet, heavy, transformative silence, where everything hung in the air, past hurts, misunderstandings, and the weight of our shared history. And in that silence, I felt something shift. I didn't need him to say anything more. I didn't need him to fully understand. The act itself, standing tall, reclaiming my life, and proving my worth, had already spoken louder than words ever could. We didn't hug immediately, and we didn't have a miraculous resolution in that moment. But something subtle, profound, and real had changed. The tension, the anger, the heartbreak that had been suffocating me for weeks began to dissipate. He understood, in his own way, that the woman he had dismissed had strength beyond what he had imagined. I had become more than a mother, more than a caretaker. I had become a force, a living example of dignity and resilience. That evening, as I walked past the house with the tenants moving in, hearing their laughter and seeing their excitement, I realized that the true victory wasn't in making him see, but in reclaiming myself. The lesson was mine first before it was his. I had endured the deepest hurt, transformed it into action, and emerged stronger, more confident, and more at peace than I had ever been. And somewhere deep inside, I knew, whether he fully understood now or not, that my life, my worth, and my love could never be diminished by someone else's short-sightedness. I had not only survived the rejection, but I had turned it into power, stability, and a quiet, undeniable triumph. After that day, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Not perfect, not exactly as I had imagined in my younger dreams, but steady, meaningful, and full of lessons I never expected to learn so vividly. I continued tending to the house I had purchased, checking in with tenants, fixing small repairs, and watching life flow through the walls I had once feared I would never again call home. Each time I walked through the rooms, I felt a sense of quiet triumph. These walls, this property, were not just bricks and paint. They were a testament to resilience, determination, and self-worth. My son began to visit more often, cautiously at first, his pride and embarrassment visible in the way he avoided eye contact and fidgeted with his hands. But with each visit, the tension eased, replaced slowly by recognition and respect. We didn't solve every problem overnight, and we didn't suddenly return to the closeness we once shared. But something had shifted, a subtle understanding, a fragile acknowledgement that while hurt and anger may linger, the bond of family can also be rebuilt when respect and empathy are present. I reflected often on the journey that had brought me here. The nights I cried alone, the days I wandered unsure of where I belonged, the moments I questioned my own worth, they all mattered. They had shaped me into someone stronger, more patient, and more self-aware. I realized that my power didn't come from money or property. It came from my ability to endure, to rise, and to act decisively when life challenged me. My house, the tenants, and the rent were symbols, yes, but the real victory was the transformation within me. I also began sharing my story with other women quietly through conversations with friends, neighbors, and sometimes strangers. I spoke about the pain of being undervalued, the heartbreak of rejection, and the quiet strength that comes from reclaiming one's life. Every woman who listened seemed to draw courage from it, and I, in turn, felt empowered knowing my journey could inspire others. Life had given me a cruel lesson, but it had also gifted me the wisdom to transform adversity into power and dignity. Sometimes, I walk past my son's house and smile quietly to myself. The anger I felt that first night has melted into calm reflection. I no longer need to prove anything to him because the act itself, rising from heartbreak, taking decisive steps, and building a life of independence, speaks louder than any argument ever could. He has seen, in his own way, the woman he once underestimated. And even though our relationship is not perfect, there is now a foundation of respect, a recognition that love, strength, and self-worth are inseparable. I have learned that life will often challenge us in ways we cannot anticipate. Loved ones may hurt us, circumstances may betray us, and the world may dismiss our value. But we are not defined by others' opinions or actions. We are defined by how we respond, by the courage to stand tall, the determination to rebuild, and the wisdom to know that self-respect is not negotiable. Now, as I sit in the quiet of my own home, watching the sunset and feeling the gentle hum of life around me, I finally understand that my journey was never just about reclaiming a house. It was about reclaiming myself, about proving, most importantly to myself, that I am never an extra mouth, never a burden, never someone to be overlooked. I am a woman who endures, who creates, who rises, and who will always matter, not because anyone else says so, but because I know it in my heart. And that, I realize, is the most profound lesson of all, that even in the face of rejection, abandonment, and heartbreak, a person can find strength, dignity, and peace. The world may have tried to push me down, but I have risen, not in anger, but in quiet, unshakable resilience. And that truly is freedom. Please like and subscribe for more. Don't forget to click the bell so you won't miss any videos. I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know what you felt while watching.